it was still possible and you did it and you didn't betray that part of yourself that wanted to be expressed in the world.
I felt with poetry, I could see the world in a different way. It's like the language of nuance and metaphor. And you can say things in poetry that's hard to say in regular life.
We know who we are when we come into the world, and then we lose ourselves, and then we come back and we find ourselves. There was this artist and this poet and this creative that is the essence of who you are, right? That maybe got a little lost along the way, which is also part of the journey.
I like to say that I snuck into the business world through the back door as an artist.
We've got to figure out what is the unique value that we're here to offer to the world.
Yes.
I have been following you for a little while now. I think I found out about your world through Jessica Zweig. And something that really caught my attention in that conversation was around the masculine and feminine aspects of creativity that you talk about. And so today I definitely would love to dive into that. But first I want to get to know you a little bit more and really hear more about your creative journey. Is it something that, like, when you were a child, you were tapped into creativity? Is it something that came to you later on in your life?
Yeah, definitely tapped into creativity as a child. I think all children are naturally creative. I mean, I think creativity is human nature. Like, I think if you had to identify one quintessential aspect of what it means to be human and what human nature is, I think that we are born to create, and some of us are born to be painters. Some of us are born to be cooks, even podcast hosts, or even like creating a relationship or a home. It's all sort of like this creative energy that moves through us. And I think we are literally designed to create. Even if you look at the human body, like a frog's nature is to jump. You can see it in its form. It's self-evident. Or a bird's nature is to fly. It's self-evident. It is human nature to create. And you can even look at we have this amazing portal of intuition and imagination that connects us with literal other dimensions of thought and inspiration that we can download, and then using our brains to kind of develop a craft and a plan to bring something into existence. And then we have these amazing bodies with these hands with 4 fingers and a thumb. It's like these are such a rare and special tool in nature that are literally designed to hold a pen or hold a brush or to make food, or to craft things into reality. And these amazing vocal cords where we can sing and speak and communicate. And I think that creativity is a life force that moves through us. And I think that when we're children, we're naturally connected with that energy. And it's only later in life that we sort of unlearn our own creativity, because we become sort of, I don't know, cogs in a machine, or get put inside of a box of a career and different social responsibilities. But yeah, I grew up in a very small town in Minnesota. So, I think there's pros and cons to every place you could grow up. And, I didn't have a lot of stimulation or culture around me, but I had a lot of room to explore both my physical surroundings and also my own imagination. So my earliest memories of being creative are just making up adventures with my friends and going on adventures and pretending we were superheroes or cowboys or explorers or whatever it was, and just like really embodying this imaginative world that we were living in, and got into drawing and writing from a young age. And then I think things really clicked for me in my early teens. I was homesick from school one day, and remember going through like the family bookshelf, and I found some poetry books that my mom had. Some of like the classics. I remember Edgar Allan Poe, for example. And I remember just reading poetry and sort of falling in love with it. It sort of felt like I had really discovered my native language in a way. I felt with poetry, I could see the world in a different way. It's like the language of nuance and metaphor. And you can say things in poetry that it's hard to say in regular life. So it really opened up my mind and opened up my heart to like a whole nother dimension of life. And I started writing poetry around like 13 or 14. And by the end of high school, I had just stacks of notebooks with handwritten poetry.
Mm.
So, and I was also exploring visual art. I guess towards my later teens, I got really into painting and drawing and really wanted to be a painter for a while. So I've always, my whole life, including up to today, have really balanced the language arts, poetry, books, words, and the visual arts. And at first that was painting, and now it's graphic design, or I always design my own books and design my book covers and all the illustrations inside. But I remember when I was out of high school, I didn't know what to do. There wasn't really any other artists around me. So I didn't really have a plan or a path to be a creative. So I went to a regular small college just because I thought it was what I had to do. And I just absolutely hated it, dropped out after a semester, and then just started to wander around the country and really be like a starving artist. And I had no plan. I had no connections. All I wanted to do was create. So I was like working odd jobs in these random towns. I was living in Syracuse, New York, I remember. And I was working like an overnight shift, stocking shelves because I'm like 20 years old. And I would get home every morning around like 8 a.m. and I would start drinking and writing poetry and painting. And I'm really glad I gave myself time to just really explore myself as an artist, completely untethered from any social expectation. But at the same time, I got incredibly depressed because I was so isolated, didn't have any friends where I was living. And I was being very creative, but nobody was seeing my work. I wasn't sharing it. I had no direction, no purpose, no mentors. So I was really hit a dead end and I was super depressed. And I was like, okay, I need to find a way to bring more purpose and direction to my creativity. So I remember I went on Google and I searched art schools in Minnesota, because I had a network back in Minnesota. And I found the first art school in Google results and I applied for it. And then I just packed all my stuff into my car and drove across the country and started going to art school in Minneapolis. And that's when it really clicked for me with, creativity as as a profession. And the biggest shift with that was finding a way to make creativity that was useful to others or useful to society in some way. Because I studied graphic design, and design is different than art in that it's purpose driven. You're trying to solve a problem. I was, whether you're imagine designing signage for a subway or signage for an airport. It's very strategic and it's a utility. It's also creative, but it's creativity for utility. So I really learned how to apply problem solving to my creative process and graduated college, started working in the advertising industry as a graphic designer. I like to say that I snuck into the business world through the back door as an artist. Because before you know it, now I'm working in advertising and I'm meeting with clients, I'm meeting with CEOs and marketing directors, and I'm pitching them my designs. And you have to learn how to communicate with business people as an artist. And that was a little bit uncomfortable at first, but kind of found my footing and got kind of bored with graphic design and decided to switch to brand strategy. And that kind of got me deeper into the business world as a strategist. And did a lot of brand messaging. I was naming companies, I was naming products, I was coming up with creative strategies for ad campaigns and for websites and for new brands and startups, and learned a lot more about business and how to bring creativity into businesses and how to help businesses grow through creative thinking. And moved to New York City and did that for 10 years on Madison Avenue.
Wow.
Got super burnt out. Whenever I moved to New York, I seemed to get burnt out, and
I wonder why. It's literally like one of the most masculine places on the planet.
It absolutely is. And so, especially like I love New York City, but it's a hard place to be a professional and have to like show up, and it's so competitive and so, like you said, masculine oriented, and it's all about productivity. And
there's a buzz to it though. Like when I go to New York to visit, I can like feel it within even just a few hours of being there. And it is very energizing. It's almost like this like adrenaline thing, right?
Oh, no question.
And then that's enjoyable for a little bit. And then like you said, I've never lived in New York or worked in New York, but I can imagine that it is a really tough place to stay connected, maybe to yourself or
Mhm.
to your soul and to your intuition in an environment like that. And something that I'm really loving learning about your journey is that you really did continue to follow your passion, even in a world that says, oh, you can't be successful as an artist. You can't be successful as a creative. Like we're
Mhm.
taught this, but creativity brings so much value to so many different industries, like you're saying, so many different businesses. And so I think even just people hearing your story of, okay, I followed my creative pursuits and it took all these different, turns throughout that experience, but that it was still possible and you did it and you didn't betray that part of yourself that wanted to be expressed in the world, which
Mhm.
is really cool.
Yeah, it was not always easy, but I didn't have a choice, I feel. But at the same time, I did lose sight of my I would say I lost sight of my creative purpose and intuition because again, I think creativity, like you alluded to, there's a feminine and a masculine aspect to it.
Hmm.
And we can get more into that, but New York being such a masculine city and advertising just being a very kind of fast-paced environment, I was being creative, but at the same time I had lost touch with sort of the deeper well of inspiration that I think creativity needs
Hmm.
to really thrive. Because if you if I'm working on like 5 to 10 clients at once and my day is full of meetings and I'm drinking coffee all day, and then it's sort of a work hard, play hard culture. So
Yeah.
then I'm also working late and then people start drinking in the office and then we go out drinking after work.
Hmm.
And it just becomes this it's a rat race. It really
Yeah.
is. And I sort of crashed and sort of, I just lost myself in this process and I felt really stuck. And one evening, I was just feeling so totally stuck. I feel like my career was stagnant. I wasn't inspired anymore. And then in this sort of frustration, I reached this point of surrender where I really surrendered to the universe, to a higher power, being like, please help take this weight off of me. I can't carry this anymore. I don't know what to do. I need help.
Mm.
And I like to say that when you surrender, you leave space, you open up space for grace to
Mm.
come in. And what that looked like for me was writing poetry again. And I remember just like a poem coming out of me. And I had not written a poem in almost 10 years.
Mm.
And that just kind of cracked me open from a creative perspective and helped me connect back with my intuition and that well of inspiration that creativity comes from. And then I really made the decision to be an artist rather than a brand strategist or a designer,
Yeah.
and really started to write poetry again, which led to making memes and writing a poetry book. And my recent book is about creativity. So I'm sort of on the other end of the advertising world
Hmm.
now, and I've sort of made a full circle return to myself and to my own like true creative expression through art and poetry and things like that.
Yeah, and that feels so resonant. Even when you're saying, "Okay, I had that surrender moment," and I smiled because I remember like I would say like my first real surrender moment. There's been many more since then, but that first one and just that, like reaching that place of, okay, like I need help, like show me the way, and
Mm-hmm.
then having that connection with something greater and having that guidance, and then your story is so resonant for what I've seen of the spiritual journey is
Mm-hmm.
like we know who we are when we come into the world, and then we lose ourselves, and then we come back and we find ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
so there was this artist and this poet and this creative that is the essence of who you are, right? That maybe got a little lost along the way, which is also part of the journey. Right? And then coming back home, and
Mm-hmm.
now you get to teach other people about creativity. And something that you talk about is that creativity isn't something that you do, it's like a process, right? And it can be a healing process for
Mm,
people. So tell us more about that perspective of how creativity can heal people and support them on their healing journeys.
absolutely. Yeah, I came to that realization because I moved to Austin 4 years ago and I was introduced to this amazing spiritual community in Austin.
Mhm.
I've been on my own spiritual path in parallel to my creative path. Grew up in the Midwest, so Christianity is sort of the only game in town. So
Yeah.
I grew up, in the church, and I felt from a young age that I had a personal connection with God or the divine, and I sort of felt claustrophobic by organized religion.
That is such a good word to describe it. I've never heard it described that way, but it's so, so good. Yeah.
Claustrophobic because I distinctly remember sitting in church
Yeah.
in high school probably and thinking like, okay, like I totally buy the idea of God. I mean, to me, God seems self-evident. I mean, the fact that there is existence, it's all God. It's all, God is the creator. God is all of creation. God is consciousness. So like we are evidence of God. We are expressions of God. I think that the same way that our art comes from us, come from God.
Mm.
It's an extension of the same energy, the same life force. So I like to think that, okay, that if the universe is a big tree, or, you could say God is a big tree, we are all like branches that are growing from the tree trunk. And then the art that we make and the things that we do are like the leaves and fruit that sprout from the branches.
Mm.
So it's an extension of the same life force. And we are products of it, but then we are also carriers of it, and it moves through us into the things that we create.
Mm.
So I feel like creativity is this extension of creation, the life force of creation that moves through us. So sitting in church, I was like, okay, I totally buy this idea of God, but I don't think that he or it is relegated to these four walls of this church. So I like to say that I went out and started searching for God in the church of life. And looking back, I realized that my guides and gurus were artists and poets and songwriters, and that my spiritual practice was my creative practice, and that, writing a poem can be a prayer
Mm-hmm.
or meditation. And I realized that, and I did explore other, I got into like Eastern philosophy and Eastern religion. I'm a bit of a Buddhist and a Taoist as well. And I had a big breakthrough when I was living in New York City, and I was looking for more direction and like more groundedness in the chaos of the city.
Yeah.
I discovered Kundalini yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge game changer for me, because it really helped me balance out all the chaos outside of me with the inner peace within me.
Mm-hmm.
And that just opened up my channel of inspiration. I would take a class and I would just leave just fully inspired, open, receptive to the muse,
Mm-hmm.
and tuned in. And I would always like just be full of ideas after a class.
Yeah.
And Kundalini sort of introduced me to what I would call sort of the spiritual community. But yeah, after moving to Austin, I saw all these healers and wellness practitioners, people who teach breath work, people who do sound healing, people who facilitate plant medicine journeys. There's a whole spectrum of healers out there, people who are using their work and their talents and their leadership to help make the world a better place and to help heal humanity, heal our trauma, heal our minds, our bodies, our souls, our hearts. So that really inspired me to join the movement of healing and to really be help make the world a better place through my own talents or whatever I could bring to the table. And I realized that creativity had always been there for me as my own healing modality.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when you write something on a piece of paper, you're sort of purging it from your system. It's sort of a cleanse. So I realized that, okay, creativity is a form of alchemy.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, so alchemy, it's a medieval sort of science of transmuting base metals into noble metals, it's turning lead into gold. And it's sort of the precursor to modern chemistry. And the idea in alchemy is that the properties of gold are inherent in the properties of lead. So you're not changing it necessarily. You're sort of, you're transmuting it and bringing out a quality that's already there. So when I think about creativity and how that process works, life happens to all of us. We all experience life, and with it comes pain, suffering, joy, happiness, confusion, everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And we all experience traumas, whether they're major or minor. And everything that happens to us leaves an imprint in our bodies. There's this saying, the body keeps score. Everything that happens to us, our emotions, our life experiences, they sort of become imprinted in our bodies. And then what do we do with them? We can either suppress them or we can express them. And it's sort of like if you have a negative emotion, if you suppress it and you bury it and you ignore it, it can really start to atrophy and decay in the body and can manifest as sickness, whether that's spiritual sickness or emotional sickness or even physical sickness. And I think the same thing happens with suppressed creativity. When we don't allow ourselves to create, when we bottle it in, and really repress it rather than express it, it eats away at us. The act of expression in whatever form is a way to excavate the inner world and identify where there might be stuck energy or emotions. Because when you're writing, it's like, where are you writing from? Subconsciously, we're looking within ourselves. And we're sort of, without even realizing it, we're sort of scanning the body for what's in there. And we're scanning our subconscious. And we're finding these nuggets of lead, so to speak. And then through that creative expression, we're alchemizing it into gold. And we can create beauty out of that pain. And then we leave, the art barely matters. You could say that, one goal of art is to be a great artist and to develop your craft and to, write an amazing book. But that's not the only goal of art. Art doesn't have to be in a gallery or published in a bookstore to be valuable. I think that act of creation is valuable in and of itself. And if you want to take the time to develop your craft and improve, like you can do that. But, just like if you go into a sweat lodge to sweat out your toxins, you're not trying to be the best sweater in the room. You're not trying to make the most beautiful sweat. If you're in an ayahuasca ceremony and you have your bucket and you have to purge, you're not worrying about how beautiful your vomit is or how elegantly you release the vomit. It's like, no, you're getting it out. That's the whole point. It's a purge. So making great art is a wonderful thing to aspire towards and dedicate yourself towards, but that's not the goal of art. That's not the purpose of art. It's like that expression has a healing property inherent in it. And it sort of helps us connect with our intuition and then open up that expression to get out whatever is sort of stuck within us. And it sort of gives us a feeling of a cleanse.
Yeah, I love that description, and it feels like it's the energy wants to move, and like when the energy is suppressed, like you said, that creates stagnancy. And when we express it in whatever capacity that is, that there's so many different ways that we can express creativity. When that energy is moving, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of spaciousness that happens in our energetic field, in our bodies, in our creativity, and our intuition. So yeah, I love this, this alchemical process that happens. And really what I'm hearing is that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey and about the process of what it takes to create that art. And I do think that sometimes when we start to get into that, putting pressure on the outcome, putting pressure on what it's supposed to look like and where it's supposed to go, it can sometimes take away that magic that is part of that process, because we get in our heads, right? We disconnect from that energetic flow to create something. Do you experience that with your art today? Are there times where you get into that, whether it's perfectionism or where you feel like you have a block when it comes to your creativity?
So I don't think I have blocks. I think that I believe that creativity comes from the subconscious. And if you're trying too hard or you're forcing it, I feel like it never comes out right. So I think that creative blocks or like writer's block, that's usually the result of like trying to pull from something that isn't there, or like you're trying to draw from an empty well. So I think that if I am not feeling inspired, I just won't do anything. Like I think that creativity is very natural. I think that I never know when I'm going to be ready to write a poem, for example. I never know. They come to me when they come to me. And if they don't come, I don't force it. So there might be times when I'm less productive. Like even now, I haven't written a poem I've written maybe one poem in the past 3 months. And I don't force it. I think when it's ready to come, it will come. And I just listen to what's trying to come out of me and try to honor that. And rather than forcing it, I think that it's better to go out and experience life, or to fill your cup, fill your energetic field with data to draw from. Because if you're just sitting in a room trying to write day after day, well, where is that inspiration going to come from?
Yeah.
So like, I think it's much more helpful for creativity to go out and live life, or, even go to an art gallery, or go out dancing, or fall in love, or like get your heart broken, and just give yourself emotions to pull from. And when you have enough, data points in your life experiences and emotions that you've experienced, then you have something to pull from, and it'll sort of effortlessly come out. It's almost like a good cry. It's like you might not anticipate when you are ready to have a good cry, but when it comes, and then it just flows. So I think creativity is similar. So I don't force it. I try to honor where I am in the process. For me, it's more about listening than it is about thinking. I think that there's thinking has a role. Like, for example, if I'm writing a poem, I honestly try to listen to the words as they come to my consciousness and write them down as they come. And sometimes when I do that, I don't even know where it's going. Like, I think the hardest thing to do in writing is to, like poetry, for example, is to write the first line, because the first line could be anything. It's like what is this going to be about? Or how does it start? But once you have a first line, it kind of like leads to the next line. It kind of leads to the next line. So I really do sort of tune in. Like, I think that my creative process starts by tuning in, which could mean meditation, could mean breath work. It could mean moving around, shaking my energy, and just opening up my intuition to a state of receptivity and listening. And I just wait for it to come. And I sit there with an open notebook. And honestly, I might sit there for an hour and nothing will come out. Or I'll just like maybe just end up doodling on my page, right? But then other days it might be a full poem, 5 social media posts, a full chapter of a book. Like, you can never predict what's going to come out, but it's just the more times you show up. And for me, it's about showing up consistently rather than measuring my work by my word count or my productivity.
That's like to me, I mean, some people might call that discipline, but I feel like that's also the devotion. It's like, I'm going to show up for this practice no matter what happens. And I'm going to create the container, create the space to listen and to allow what wants to come through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like this would be a really great time for us to even weave in, the yin and the yang of creativity. And you've started to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing there is like maybe there's a little bit of a leading with the feminine of like the receiving first, and then the creating or the producing of the action that gets taken after that. Is that how you would describe it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Taoism. Like, the Tao Te Ching is my favorite book, and it says things like all being is born from non-being, or all doing is born from being, or all doing is born from non-doing. So it's sort of like the yin and the yang are sort of roughly translate to the feminine and masculine polarity, right? They're like equal and opposite energies that are in the universe, and they permeate all things. It's in nature, it's in us, it's in everything. And the yin for me symbolizes more of a state of receptivity, flow, and just being and feeling and listening, and not forcing action for the sake of action, but to cultivate that stillness. And that stillness is the stillness of the soil or the stillness of the womb. These are these like magical dark places where new life grows. And these are so mystical, and it's sort of, when you actually stop and think about it, it's absolutely mind-blowing. Like the idea of the soil or the womb, these dark places where the seed of life unfolds. And that's the same with creativity. You can't start by, if you're a painter, your work does not start on the canvas. If you're a writer, your work does not start on the page. It starts in the womb of your own being, the womb of your own consciousness, the soil of your being. So planting seeds would be just sort of like living life and having experiences, and then letting those take root and grow within you, and letting them unfold at their natural pace. Like, you can't rush a garden to grow faster. You can't rush a baby to grow faster. They have their own time frame, and you have to honor them, and you have to protect that life as it's growing, and water the soil, and care for it and tend to it. And I think that this is tending to our own consciousness, our own energy, and taking care of ourselves and cultivating that womb and being protective of our own internal space and not getting too preoccupied with what's happening around us or getting swept up in the chaos of the world or chasing social validation, but letting our ideas nurture and giving them time to evolve at their natural pace. And just to make a farming metaphor, it's like, yes, so the yin would be planting the seeds, watering the soil, making sure it has sunlight to grow, and it's cultivating all of that life under the surface before you can even see it. So there's a lot of things happening that you can't even see yet. These are all the yin, the feminine aspects of creativity. But then at a certain point, you don't want to get stuck there either, because at a certain point you want to harvest the crops, right? And this is where the yang comes in. This is where the masculine action-oriented practices come in, where it's like, okay, at a certain point when the crops are ready, you can harvest them, and then you clean them and you cut them and you cook them and you serve them as a meal. These are yang activities. It's about action and more like the productivity of bringing it to life. And this is just as important, because you could easily be in that state of yin where you're receptive and you're in flow and you're inspired. But if you stay there, you might not be able to get anything done. So at a certain point, you need to get shit done, right? So that means having a dedicated practice and, developing your craft. It means practicing. I think you have to be a bad artist before you can be a good artist. So it takes that repetition, that muscle memory, practicing it again and again and again. I wonder how many poems I wrote before my first poem was published. Hundreds, if not 1,000 poems that no one ever read, that I had to write in order to write the ones that got published or that went viral on social media or whatever. Yeah. No one sees the stack of 1,000 poems that no one ever read that I needed to write to get me to the point where I was publishing them.
Yeah. So important. And especially with social media nowadays, it's like people see a finished product, or they see someone who has been working their craft for years and years and years, and things go viral, things take off, and they're like, oh, they just have something that I don't have. And it's like, no, they don't. This is, this is someone who's been devoted to their craft and spent hours and hours. And I love this analogy of the garden. And something when I look at your social media, I really love this conversation that you have about almost like respecting the creative process instead of trying to get it to fit into our Western ideals and Western strategies of productivity, and really understanding the creative process and not making yourself wrong if you're not feeling creative 24/7, right? Getting out of that forcing creativity and more so getting into that receptive state. And you've shared many different ways that you can get into that receptive state. And for different people, there's different things that really, resonate for them, different practices. And I love this piece around, okay, go live your life, go enjoy your life. And I think that can be hard for people, especially because we do live in a 3D material world where you have to pay rent and you've got, certain responsibilities. So for someone who's wanting to start shifting into this direction, I'm sure in your new book, you've got some great tips, and maybe we can share a little bit about that. But for someone who's like, yeah, I'm really wanting to get out of this old paradigm, and I want to activate my creativity, and I want to be in my expression, and I want to honor these cycles, like where might someone like that start?
Yeah. I think it's an important question, because I think we're at a really interesting intersection in history, even, because I feel like the world is changing faster than ever. And, I hate going on LinkedIn, and I don't go on LinkedIn very often, but I found myself going on LinkedIn more lately because I've been seeing so many posts from people in my old world of advertising and marketing, et cetera, technology, who are losing their jobs. And I just see one post after another of layoffs. And, I think we grew up with this idea that the economy was relatively stable and that certain industries were stable. And maybe in our generation, like tech jobs were stable because they were the future. And now it seems like those jobs are no longer stable. You know, AI is changing so much and everything's shifting faster than ever. So I think a lot of people are asking this question is like, okay, maybe I already felt stuck, but now I don't even have the job security I thought I had. So I think it's really important question for everyone to ask themselves is how can I transition my life and career to being something that is sustainable, but it's also purpose driven. And it's something that we want to do, that we feel called to do, and that we want to be of service
Yeah,
to
and adding value
others
to the world.
and
Yeah.
adding value to the world. No one wants to be a cog in a machine in an office. That's just not satisfying. So I think it's really important for everyone to ask themselves like how they want to be of service, first of all. And I think this process of creativity really applies beyond traditional art like poetry or painting. I think it applies to anything you want to do.
Creative solutions.
Creative
Yeah.
solutions, creative problem solving.
Yeah. I never saw myself as a creative person.
Mhm.
It took me, it might have even been when I was, we have a mutual friend, Jolie, and long ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I took her course, Create Chicks Calling. And I really started to see like, oh, I am a creative. You know, I have always enjoyed writing or dancing, and those are ways that I like to express myself. But even, you know, creating this podcast, created it from nothing, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
or creating programs in my
Yes.
business and things that I like to teach. It's like we all have our own form
Right.
of being a creative. And I love this piece of the intersection of creativity and service, creativity and purpose, because even when we look at, you know, if you take it out of the job security, it's like people will pay for things that they value.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've got to figure out what is the unique value that we're here to offer to the world.
Yes.
And create our own sense of security and safety and knowing within ourselves of that, and being willing to evolve and change as the world changes. Like
Yep.
it's changing.
Yes.
And the people who are going to continue to move forward with that are the ones who are like, okay, I'm not clinging on to the past. I'm not clinging on to the way that things are. It's hard that it's changing, especially in the world of social media and AI. And I'm sure, you know, lots of creative jobs, like you said, are shifting, but there's something else that wants to come through. And I think the people who are the most innovative, who are the most resilient, who are the ones who are like, okay, I get to evolve and change too. Like those
Yeah.
are the ones who are going to continue to move forward in a
Yeah.
positive way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that in a way the old world is dying, and I think that nothing ever truly dies. It just changes form. So I think there's a new world that's on the precipice of being born. And we all have an opportunity to start creating the new world as opposed to propping up the old world as it's falling apart. So I think that everyone has an opportunity to do this. And I think that there's nothing more creative than being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is the most creative thing you can do. Cause like, you know, what they say you make money. Well, you're making money. You're making it. You're making it. You're opening up a revenue stream that didn't exist. Like this is a creative act. So your business can be your art. And it certainly is part of my art. And I think the same process I apply to writing poetry, I apply to running my business, which really comes down to being of service to what's trying to move through me and being of service to what am I uniquely qualified to say or share or offer or teach. Everyone has a unique journey, a unique career path. We all learn unique lessons. We all study different things, whether that's professionally in school or just on our own through our own passions. So I think it's important for everyone to ask themselves, well, what am I qualified to do? What am I qualified to, how am I qualified to serve? And it could be something that's more that you've learned on your spiritual journey. It could be a variation of what you used to do professionally, but doing it maybe in a different way that's maybe more conscious and, as they say, direct to consumer, taking out the middleman of institutions and corporations and stepping into the spotlight as a thought leader, which can be a sort of an uncomfortable thing to do if you're not used to doing that. You know, it took me a long time. I was always very comfortable as a writer. alone in my room with music on in my notebook. I could do that all day. But when I started publishing books and getting invited onto podcasts, that was a big, that was very uncomfortable for me at first. There was a point when I thought I couldn't do that. And now, again, you do it enough. It's like you write enough poems that are bad, you're going to start writing some good poems. So, you go on enough podcasts, you try enough business ideas, and maybe they do fail. I mean, I would love to know the stats on this, but I think that most entrepreneurs have a failed business before they have a successful business, right?
Yeah, or they quote unquote fail for many years until it becomes successful,
Exactly.
whether it's the same business or a different business. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to be okay failing. You have to be comfortable failing. It's like I have a friend who's a stand-up comedian, and I asked her, like, well, what's the key to being good at stand-up? And she's like, honestly, just going up on stage and bombing as many times as possible. Because you can write jokes. Again, you can write jokes in your room by yourself all day, every day, and think you're writing these great, amazing jokes. But that's not what translates in stand-up comedy. It's like the stage presence, the timing, it's the subtle nuances that you cannot improve without doing it. I'm a big believer in you learn best by doing.
Yes.
You can study all day, all night. You can practice alone in your room, but you've got to get out and try things. And only then there's a writing analogy where it's like, it's easier to fix bad pages than no pages. Get something out there, and then it might fail. It'll probably do better than you expect, but get it out there and then learn from it. What worked, what didn't, improve upon it, and then keep iterating on it, no matter what that is. So I always say, like, my clients and things, like, start something. Like, what are you uniquely qualified to serve? Who is your audience? And your audience is always in some way like a younger version of yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like you can only teach what you have learned. Your audience is always some version of you, and figure out who that is and what you are qualified to offer or what you're inspired to offer. And if you feel like you don't have enough information, maybe take some time to study it more. Maybe take some classes, maybe go to some events and really see how other people are doing it, and really become a student of whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And then try something, do a free online class, do a free in-person event, just try something. And it doesn't matter if 2 people show up or if 3 people show up. You're going to learn way more doing that than you will just ruminating about it and letting the wheels spin in your head. So I always say, jump in before you're ready and just try it. And you can always get better at it, but you can't get better until you try.
Yeah. Yeah, that courage to take the action is so necessary. And I had, when I first started teaching workshops, I had a few people on them, and now it's grown and grown and grown. And when I first thought about making this podcast, I recorded the first episode in my walk-in closet. I had no idea what I was doing. I had to ask a friend what kind of mic to get,
Sure.
and I didn't know where it was going to go. I had no idea that it would lead me here.
Yeah.
But, I think we're 360, 70 episodes later, didn't just happen that we landed here having you on the podcast, being in this conversation. So lots and lots of practice behind the scenes. And I think that's an important reminder. Yeah.
Yeah, I did I host open mics, and I never used to host events either. Like maybe I was invited to speak once or twice, different places. But when I moved to Austin, I just saw so many poets and artists and singers, and I'm like, I'm just going to start an open mic night. And mostly because I had just written a poetry book and I wanted to share my poetry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start an open mic night. I thought I might do I thought I would just do a one-off thing. So I just did one little open mic, and maybe 10 people showed up, and it was cool. But I just thought I should keep doing this. So I just committed to doing it every month. It's been amazing to see how much it's grown. Now, 100 people will come a night, and some amazing singers,
super talented
musicians.
Yeah.
There's medicine music that's played. There's rappers. There's some comedy. And then I sort of even published the format to how to host your own. It's called Sunflower Club. And we've had other people hosting Sunflower Clubs all over the world. We've had them in New Zealand. We've had them in Florida. We've had them in Canada. We've had them in, I think, Germany. So it's like one little idea, it's like planting a seed,
Hmm.
and you have to plant that seed for it to grow. But if you keep nurturing it, it's going to eventually sort of find its way into the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I
Yeah.
know that people can find out more about Sunflower Club through your Instagram, I imagine.
Yeah. Through my
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah, beautiful. So, as we're wrapping up here, my final question, which is really a personal curiosity, because I've been, seeing your memes and I've been seeing a lot of people, really sharing creative, thoughtful ideas through memes. And I just love to hear a little bit about your process when you're creating memes.
Great question. It's changed a lot. First of all, I think that the nature of art and creativity and writing is always changing.
Hmm.
And at one point, writing was on a scroll, or before that, it was memorized. It was like oral recitation. And then we developed scrolls and people could record it. And then the printing press was developed. And then like
The typewriter.
the typewriter, but then even like a rapper is a poet, right?
Hmm.
So I think that the nature of art is always, I should say the spirit of art is always moving through each culture,
Hmm.
and it sort of takes the form of the common tools and technology of its time. I was inspired to start making memes while listening to some YouTube videos of Terrence McKenna, who is this great, like, you could call him like a psychedelic philosopher.
Hmm.
And he died like in the year 2000. So this was like pre-social media. But in these videos in the 80s and the 90s, he was talking about memes. And I'm like, why is he talking about memes? Like memes aren't those like those funny things on social media?
Hmm.
Why is Terrence McKenna talking about memes in the 80s?
Hmm.
But the deeper meaning of meme is it's sort of like a viral idea. So the word meme was invented by the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, and he created the word meme to make an analogy to the in biology what a gene is. So a gene is like the smallest unit of biology.
Hmm.
And a gene will replicate and it will mutate. And when there's gene mutation, the advantageous gene mutation will be the dominant one that spreads. And this is what we call evolution,
Hmm.
survival of the fittest. So a meme is a similar thing, but in the world of culture and ideas. It's sort of like a viral idea. It's like the smallest unit of an idea that can sort of take root in the collective consciousness and spread from one person to another to another. So it's sort of like it could be like a meme could be almost like any trend, or it could be like a catchphrase that sort of takes root and grows.
Hmm.
So when I think about memes, I think about what is the message that I want to plant in the collective consciousness to spread. And memes, internet memes, are sort of like the perfect carrier for ideas, because when I started making memes, I saw firsthand the power of social media to spread ideas, because I had been on social media for years, like most people, and I wasn't super active, but I was creating things, and I started making memes and I started really going viral. Like my audience started growing. I was getting like 1,000 followers a day for like a year. like I was like, this is crazy. And I was inspired to keep making memes because I just hit this sort of like creative flow state where I was just, every night I would just sit down and start making memes. And this was like during like the height of COVID. And memes are such this kind of like, they're sort of silly and absurd, and sort of the world felt so upside down and chaotic and really absurd that memes were sort of the only way I could like navigate what was happening, if that
Bring
makes
some
sense.
levity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's levity, but it's also like I could say things in memes that I couldn't say in regular life.
Yeah.
And you can get away with saying it in a meme that you can't get away with saying it in regular life, because it's more like you're making a joke about it.
Yeah.
So there's something about a meme that it's sort of like a joke where whether you agree with it or not, it sort of like connects with you on a more visceral, guttural level. And it just sort of bypasses your intellect and just hits you in the gut. So that's why we send memes to each other. They kind of communicate something that's hard to say without it. So, my process for making memes could be a lot of things. Like I either have an idea for what I want to say, and then I'll go search for an image that kind of represents that feeling. Or probably more often I'll get inspired by an image. Like I spend a lot of time, like most people, on social media, but I try to use my time on social media purposefully. So I'm always sort of scanning for inspiration, and I find images that inspire me. So I'm always just saving images that I find that resonate. I'm like, oh, this would make a great meme.
Mhm.
And then I just upload it to my private Pinterest board where I collect all my meme templates.
Yeah.
So I've just got like hundreds of meme templates to tap into. And I just sort of be like, well, what is this image saying to me? Like, what does my voice and my message sound like expressed through this image? The sum of the image and the words becomes greater than its parts in a way.
Yeah.
And again, I've always explored visual design and writing. So memes are a place where those come together very well. So I sort of see my memes as an extension of my poetry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so cool to hear about your process, and it feels like what you were saying before, like what am I uniquely qualified to create, and taking your words with the graphic design and being able to see images in the way that you do, I think is so unique, which is why it's taking off and why people are resonating with it too. Yeah.
I will say this too, because this ties into being of service and being an entrepreneur. How are you uniquely qualified to serve? Well, I was making viral memes and I was sort of being known as this meme artist, but I still wasn't making any money off my creativity. So the very first offering I ever created was meme school. Because I'm like, what can I offer? What am I known for? How can I turn this into a business? And I'm like, okay, well, no one's teaching how to make memes. This is something that I'm already known for. So I just sort of invented this new art class about making memes. And that was sort of my first step into being an entrepreneur. So it was based on sort of what I was already doing and teaching something I had already been developing, but then, teaching other people to make it and then helping spread the seed of memes.
I love that.
Even farther.
Yeah. So cool. Well, I love that you've brought in that entrepreneurial spirit with your art, and that you're really, serving others and teaching others these skills and tools and different ways of thinking. And I've really enjoyed sitting here with you today, getting to learn from you and to hear your ideas, because I feel like this is part of the new consciousness that we're wanting to bring forward. So thank you for your voice. Thank you for your work, for your art, and thank you for being here to share with us today. And for our listeners, let's share where they can find you. And I know you have a new book coming out, so where can they find your book?
Yeah. And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here with you. You can find me on Instagram at Words Are Vibrations. One word, Words Are Vibrations. And then all my classes and books are all in the link in my bio. And my latest book is called The Art of You, the Essential Guidebook for Reclaiming Your Creativity.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to reading that. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks.